Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to Coffee Talk! Today, we're going to talk about the Philadelphia experiment. Don. So, remember, coffee talks are for things I find interesting but don't necessarily believe, and I need a lot of coffee to swallow them, if you know what I mean. So, the Philadelphia experiment could best be described as an urban legend. Yes, there are some facts, but then there's a whole lot of fabrication. Even a sci-fi movie that was really just a love story disguised as a sci-fi movie by that title, starring the cool actor who was Eddie in Eddie and the Cruisers. So let's separate fact from fiction, and let's get to the meat of the matter and find out all what about the whole hubbub of Philadelphia experiments all about. This kind of goes on the heels of my Tesla discussion, because when you look at the whole narrative, you find Tesla and Albert Einstein at the core of some of this. But let's start by just presenting the urban legend as it can be found on the internet. And then I'll switch gears on you and shift up, and we'll talk about the facts of the matter and what was really going on, and what we know for a fact and what we know to be kind of BS. So, in a nutshell, the Philadelphia experiment was supposedly something that occurred at the Philadelphia naval shipyards in October of 1943. This was the height of the war, World War II, and we were getting our butt kicked by U-boats in the Atlantic. So our ships were coming under surprise attack from U-boats. We were dealing with a lot of mines, sea mines that our ships were running into. And they wanted to come up with a way for our ships to move about silently without being detected by enemy radar. You could say it was the first attempt at some kind of stealth technology. And so, once again, this is according to the urban legend, according to the mythology. And so the government got together with the top scientists of the time, which included Tesla, and it also included Albert Einstein. And they began to work on the concept of creating a ship that was invisible to radar and could not be targeted through that means. Now, according to the storyline, Albert Einstein had a theory of how to do this exact thing. And Tesla had the working knowledge of electromagnetic fields to produce an electromagnetic field through the use of generators that could cause a ship to not appear on radar or have radar deflection. Now, what they ended up discovering was much, much more than just radar invisibility. Don't. According to the legend, they actually believed they had discovered a way to create an invisibility or cloaking shield around a ship so that it not only would not show up on radar, but it would not show up at all. It would be invisible to the naked eye. And so these experiments started probably at the very beginning of the war, from what I can tell, and they accumulated into this final effort at the Philadelphia naval shipyards in Pennsylvania in 1943. This is an important and pivotal time, 1943. This coincides pretty much with the death of Tesla. It's about the same time that he died in a rented room in New York City. This would be the time that the government shifts gears and goes full force into the development of the nuclear weapons that we now live in fear of, right? That would lead to the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima and the end of World War II. And as I spoke about in a previous video, Tesla's death ray was being considered for this same kind of super weapons technology, but they opted to go with Oppenheimer and Albert Einstein's theory of nuclear weapons, and that is the reality we now live in. But during this process, they were working together on this project of creating an invisible ship, the ultimate sneak weapon, the ultimate sneaky attack weapon, the ultimate defensive weapon. And so they were putting this together, and according to the legend, Tesla pulled out. Right before they were getting ready for the final testing, he determined that this would be dangerous, that it could potentially cause lives, that they were putting all the members of the ship who were on board at risk. He was opting for a non manned vessel to experiment on first instead of having one manned by humans. And he was overruled by the Navy, who needed something that they could test the safety of, and they were willing to put men's lives at risk. And Tesla was not willing to do this, and he walked away, and another scientist took his place. And this scientist had way less ethics. I'm not going to throw a bunch of names around here. Do your own research on this. But the guy that took over for Tesla was once reported to say that if you want to bomb them at 5 o'clock, I'm going to say 1 o'clock. If you want to bomb them tomorrow, I'm going to say, how about yesterday? So he was very much a warmonger, and he did not have a problem with casualties. He didn't have a problem with people losing their lives in the discovery process. And so in October of 1943, according to legend, the ship, the USS Eldridge, was chosen, and the generators were installed in this vessel, and they did the test in the naval shipyards in Philadelphia. And most of you have heard this, but we're going to flesh it out completely. And so what appeared to have happened is that when they threw the switch on the generators, a green mist emerged from and around the ship and engulfed it, and it disappeared in the blink of an eye. Now, it reappeared, having traveled through time. See, this is one of the things that happened that, according to legend, they didn't believe would happen. They didn't know that this would happen. They didn't know the ship would actually go someplace else. They thought it would stay there and somehow just become invisible. But what actually happened is this was teletransported through space 250 miles away to Virginia, to another shipyard where it appeared 10 minutes sooner than they had thrown the switch. So in other words, they throw the switch and the ship goes back in time and travels 250 miles away to reappear in Virginia 10 minutes before the test actually started. So they traveled back in time 10 minutes. The ship was seen there for about 10 minutes by witnesses, apparently, on other neighboring ships that saw the ghost ship appear and then disappear. And it reappears in the Philadelphia shipyard 10 minutes after the start of the test. So it's kind of missing in time and space, which is actually something that we know occurs, or have heard of it occurring, in the Bermuda Triangle. And the Bermuda Triangle was an obsession of many scientists, including Tesla. And I honestly believe that what Tesla was tapping into was the electromagnetic fields that are present in places where these ley line vortexes occur, most famously in the Bermuda Triangle and other places. I believe it's the Hopi Indians that have a sacred site that appears like a door into a wall, into a rock wall that goes nowhere, carved into the wall, that they claim is a portal that aliens, the ancestors, the ancient ones, used to travel to and from through. And they did it by tapping into these ley lines and this energy field that is apparently present throughout the earth. And so Tesla set out to create an artificial ley line vortex, and that's exactly what he did, and they traveled through time. The only problem is there were humans on board. And if you've ever seen Star Trek, you know that sometimes the transporter goes jabberwocky and things get scrambled. One of my favorite episodes of Star Trek is where they jump into an alternate universe when the transporter malfunctions, and you get an evil Kirk and an evil Spock and an evil Bones, and you have this other reality where everybody's so good they're ineffective at everything. And so there's these different universes where things are slightly different. And this is probably what occurred. That this, Later on, some of the people who claimed to have been on the vessel when this occurred said that they passed through what seemed like a wormhole, and the whole ship did, and there they encountered aliens. So there is an alien agenda, an alien edge to this overall story. Don't. That somehow aliens knew what they were doing, and so they jumped in the middle of their little time warp, and I had an interaction of some sort with some of the people on the ship. But the horrific reality is when the ship reappears in Philadelphia, human beings are fused into the body of the ship. They have their DNA is fused with the ship in places, and others were completely just set on fire, and some were said to have their bodies burned for 18 hours after this event. Some of them, the rest of them, went crazy. Apparently, some of them jumped off of the ship, which leads us to another person, and I believe his name is Balebeck. I can't remember the entire name, but his name is Balebeck, I think, something like that. But this is a guy who claims that he went to see this 1980s movie that I mentioned earlier, the Philadelphia Experiment, and in watching it, he had a flashback and suppressed memories came up about him being involved in these secret experiments. He claims to have been on the ship. He's the one that claims to have encountered aliens. He would go on to claim that he was part of the Montauk Project, which is probably another coffee talk that needs to be done. That I think I might have done one on the Montauk Monster, but not on the Montauk Project. He would also claim to become unstable in time. He claimed that him and his brother were the people in question in the movie who jumped off the ship and found themselves bouncing through time, including more than 1,000 years into the future. So I don't put a lot of. I had some coffee for Bill Beck's whole story, the whole story. He's kind of up there with Corey Good on the believability scale for me, which is saying he's not believable. But according to his portion of it, a lot went on in that missing time as the Eldridge passes back and forth through time and space. Now, the horrificness of this event apparently was so bad that the government decides to shuttle the entire project and do away with it completely, never looking into it again, and choosing the backward engineering mechanics that they find in the Roswell crash in 47 to ultimately devise stealth technology that makes our airplanes today not invisible, but definitely produces a much smaller and less distinguishable radar signature. And so we now have a level of radar invisibility to some degree, but it's not this technology. And as far as avoiding mines, the government back in 43 shifted gears and went with a less scary method of confusing some of these radar triggered mines that they were encountering in the Atlantic. So the project goes away forever because it was the experiment itself was so horrific and so many people lost their lives, and it was just an ugly mess. So there is the Philadelphia Experiment in a nutshell. Now, let's find out where it came from. Let's dig a little deeper and find out if there's any truth whatsoever about the experiments that happened in Philadelphia in 1943. So here are the facts as I've been able to discover them. Fact number one, we were doing radar invisibility experiments with electromagnetic fields in Philadelphia in the shipyards there in 1943. It did, in fact, involve input from all of the major scientists, including Einstein and Tesla. But as far as I can tell, there's no real proof that the experiment, as it was portrayed in the movie and portrayed in the urban legend, actually occurred, or that anybody lost their lives according to that. It does look like several attempts were made before shifting gears to a new electrical, not electromagnetic, but a straight electrical method of disguising these ships from the radar and the detection, the method of detection that mines were being used in the Atlantic at the time. And for a while, it bought us a little bit of invisibility from the U-boats before Germany just readjusted its methods and moved in another direction, and then we were vulnerable again. So nothing was really accomplished. The experiments were probably, from what I can tell, terminated because they just weren't working. They had limited resources and not enough time. They were facing a war, so they started putting all of their efforts, scientific efforts, into the development of the nuclear bomb. And so now, it would have just stayed there. Nobody would have cared. It never would have been a legend, except there was a man who wrote a book in 1955. This man was a scientist, not a conspiracy theorist, and he wrote kind of the definitive weigh in on UFO and UFO technology. And it became a very famous book. It was big amongst ufologists, people that are into UFOs. And sometime in 1955, he receives some letters from a mysterious man. The author who received these letters that were written to him immediately kind of deduces that the person who wrote the letters is not quite right. They're not really, they're very creative. They have a wild imagination. They claim to know things, but there's no proof in it. They can't provide any proof. And it is here where the Philadelphia experiment story is spawned by an anonymous. Later on, we did discover his identity. The only truth in what we know about the person that is he was involved in some way or stationed at the time of the Philadelphia experiments, the real experiments that went on there. In 1943, when he said he was there, he was there. Now, everything else tends to, I believe, most people believe, is the product of a kind of mentally unstable person with paranoia and a huge imagination. And he concocts the story of the invisible ship. He concocts the story of it traveling through space and time. He delivers this in a series of unhinged, hard to follow letters to this author who basically dismisses it as the rantings of a crazy person. And some time would pass. He would receive many, many letters from this individual to the point where he could easily identify the style of writing and handwriting of the person. And he kind of just forgot about it. He wasn't trying to investigate it. He just wrote it off as, a crazed fan who liked his writing and was kind of not all there. So he doesn't think much about it till a few years later, he gets a knock on the door by none other than the Men in Black. Don, don, don. These people identifying themselves as being in charge of research and development for naval weapons, being involved in this technology, they just knock on this author's door one day and they're holding a copy of his UFO book. And they show him this UFO book, and in the margins and scattered throughout the book is a lot of notes. It appears to be written by 3 different people, one of them claiming to be an alien. Apparently, this book was given to or sent to the Naval Intelligence Office and ended up in their lap. And these Navy men in black came to this author's house and wanted to know what he knew about this person and whether he thought any of these rantings were true, and if he had any contact with this person. Since it was his book, they wrote it all in. And, the author of the UFO book, he really didn't put any credence into the Philadelphia experiment story. He didn't really believe it at all. But why would the Navy be coming to him? Why would they be here investigating this if there was nothing to it? And it got his wheels turning. He started to wonder whether this crazy person was telling the truth, or maybe this crazy person accidentally stumbled onto some real experimentation there, and they were concerned for national security. There is a national security secrecy in inventions law that says the government has the right to intercept at the patent level any technology that they find might be a risk to national security, and they have the right to seize it and suppress it until they deem it to be safe. which in many cases is never. And if you watch the channel and you're a fan, you know these same men in black came to my mom and dad's house and confiscated my dad's Briggs and Stratton motor that was converted to run on water, or was basically a hydrogen powered, uh, fueled engine that ran off a garden hose. And we were quite proud of this experiment we made in our garage when they showed up one night and seized the machine, and told us if we were patriots, we'd keep our mouth shut, and if we weren't, we might end up dead, was the implication. It's like, be a patriot, think of your government first, and never make this machine again or talk about it, or don't. You know the rest. Wink, wink. Which may be what happened to Tesla. He was old, but he did seem to die a bit mysteriously. Not saying anything, just the timing. The timing of Tesla's death says a lot. So once this individual, this author, started to think maybe there's something to this whole Philadelphia experiment thing, he started really researching it and digging. And I don't think that was something he was supposed to do, because after a few years of this, he calls a friend, another scientist, another curious mind, and calls him on the phone and says, hey, let's have dinner tomorrow night. I've uncovered something about this Philadelphia experiment that I find interesting, and I think it's a breakthrough, and I'd like to bounce it off of you. Well, he never got a chance to have dinner with the author of the UFO book, the person doing the investigation, because he mysteriously died of an apparent suicide by car exhaust that very night. Don't. Arkansas. Sorry. Lee Harvey Oswald was acting alone. And the check's in the mail, right? Trust me. So we have the mysterious death of this author, and you'd think the thing would just kind of go away, but it ends up being the part of this Hollywood movie at the core of this science fiction love story, and it resurrects the whole concept of the Philadelphia experiment, and it suggests that it's based in reality, and it's just kind of took off from there. Beelbeck, he had a way of really resurrecting this thing. When he saw the Hollywood movie, he claims to have had suppressed memories. He's also the one person that does say that the survivors of the Eldridge experiment in Philadelphia underwent severe brainwashing and kind of MK Ultra torture methods to suppress the memories. And therefore, when he saw the movie and he saw the fusion of the body parts in the side of the ship that's depicted in that film, that he had a flashback, and all this other stuff came to light. So once he surfaced, it kind of reinvigorated the mythology. But the bottom line is, there was no Philadelphia experiment, in my opinion. There were Philadelphia experiments. None of them were as grand as making a ship disappear. But they did look into the concept of invisibility. Maybe they stumbled into some science that might come into play in the future concerning electromagnetic fields. It might be at the base to some degree of what's going on at CERN now, some of the things they discovered in 43. But as far as a disappearing ship, there's just not much proof. There's a lot of people that claim they saw it, but they also aren't really believable. Their record of who they were and where they were at the time doesn't always line up. And it just seems to me like it's the fruit of an imagination and a paranoid mind. I could be wrong. I'm not passing judgment. Tell me, what do you think about the Philadelphia experiments? Do you think all those soldiers lost their lives? Do you think people burned for 18 hours? Do you think a ship traveled back in time and 250 miles away just to reappear with all this carnage on board? Or do you believe that this is just, like the guy that woke up in the bathtub with only one kidney and a sorry letter from the girl he picked up at the bar the night before? That's another urban legend. Actually, that actually happened, I think, a time or two. I'm not sure what came first: the actual kidnapping and stealing of kidneys, or or did they just copy the urban legend and think, hey, that's a good way to get a kidney? I don't know. I don't know about this one. It don't hold a lot of water for me. I needed all of this giant, big old Pisces cup full of coffee to be able to swallow even part of it. But I was surprised to find that there is some factual evidence that experiments on electromagnetism and invisibility were in fact going on in Philadelphia in 43, and that Tesla was involved along with Albert Einstein, and that it was just abandoned because they had bigger fish to fry. Oh, that was a bad pun because they were working on the nuclear bomb. Fried fish. Ah! They'll fry anything. Man, that'll fry you good there. Or maybe now I'm not even going to go there. I'm in a 14-year-old mood this morning, so I started to make a bunch of off-color jokes. So you're getting this on Friday night, or you're getting it on Saturday morning, but I hope you enjoyed it. I want to remind you I'm a one-man show here. I preach 2 days a week, and 1 day a week we have a little bit of fun with this, and the rest of the time I'm researching, praying, fasting, trying to make a difference in the world, trying to change lives. If you value what you find here, if you're a fan of the channel, if you like what I do, please consider supporting this channel financially. It's funded by viewers like you. I receive 0 ad money from Mr. YT, and yeah, it's all about whether y'all love this stuff enough to help support me. I don't live large. You can see I live in a cabin in the woods. I drive like a 14-year-old Toyota Corolla, and I dress from Ross. Best dressed for less. This one, I don't know. I think it came from Ross. I think the hat might be from Walmart. I live on the cheap. Please support this channel so I can keep making videos, because all y'all know if I get a full-time job, I don't make videos. So if you like what you see here, please support it by liking this video, sharing it with your friends, dipping over there to the spiritual stuff and see if you hear anything you like. And I promise you, you won't feel condemned or judged if you come over there. And if you attack me over there about my beliefs, well, I might come back at you, but most of the time I get nothing but love over there. I want to give a couple of quick shout outs for those who have hung on here long towards the end. I'd like to shout out to Annie in Illinois, who sent me an interesting letter. She said, I don't always agree with you, but I see you. And God is good because he gave us chocolate cake. And then she gave me a beautiful gift, and which will probably buy me some chocolate cake if I were inclined to push my diabetic limits to the edge and have a piece of chocolate cake. But thank you, Annie. Thank you to Craig, my archivist, who's working so hard to save for forever these videos and put them in a audio format that'll be around forever so my stories won't die. Thank you also for the gifts coming from there, and all of my supporters, everyone who's pitched in and helped me make bills this month and kept me from driving DoorDash. Only God knows how much I really appreciate it. And sometimes the love I get from this channel is the only thing that keeps me hanging on in this evil, wicked world. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm out of coffee, and I'm out of time, and we'll see you next time on Coffee Talk! PayPal, link in the description. See you next time.